I feel like I don't know that much about your beginnings with consuming clarity.
In my previous life, I went to school for social work and I was a social worker. So I did case management. I worked with like teenagers who were in foster care or were involved in basically like the child welfare system. And I really liked my job. I really loved my kids, and my coworkers were amazing and my boss was amazing. There was an element of emotional exhaustion because you see a lot of things. And you also see a lot of corruption because within any system like that, there's a lot of putting things to the back burner. But for me, it was just really hard to watch because these were kids' lives. And I was kind of an annoying person in the workplace because I was very much a squeaky wheel and constantly like, well, what are we doing about this problem for this kid? Because every single day they're waking up and they're living this reality and it sucks. It's like, what are we doing? And that's not how the system works. It doesn't work fast and it doesn't truly work in the favor of kids, unfortunately. So I just got kind of burnt out from trying to advocate for these things and basically told, oh, we're working on it, knowing that really nothing was getting done. I was in my early 20s. I think at this point I was like 23. And I was like, do I want to chase money? Like, do I want to be rich? Is that what I want to do? Do I want to continue to serve people? Is that what I want to do? And I felt like there was all of these avenues, which is such a blessing and something that not everyone in every country or every economy or every phase of life has. But I was so hyper aware of the fact that I was in my early 20s, living in America, and like the world is my oyster. And it was almost detriment in a way because, okay, I can do anything I want. What do I want to do? And I was so overwhelmed by that feeling of I can do anything because I felt like it was such a blessing, but I also felt like it was such a curse at the same time. And it made me so aware of that we as a civilization and a society have gotten really to a point where we're just like, okay, I can literally do anything with my life because prior to modern day society, your family was an economic unit. You either got married off or you were raised into a farm that then became your business or whatever it was. And now in life, we just have so many options. And we also live in such a digital age with so much information. So I just remember every day I would wake up and I would do these like brain dump journals where I would just sit with my journal and just brain dump it all out and like cry a lot and just be like, what am I going to do with my one precious life? And I look back on that time and it really like shaped a lot of what I decided to do. But there's this one specific day that stood out to me where I was so overwhelmed and so inundated by this like chronic issue I was experiencing that I was home alone and I like turned off all the Wi-Fi and all the phones and all the TVs and everything. And I was like, I need to hear God's voice. And I like laid on the floor, and I think I laid on the floor, not kidding, for like 4 hours. And I was just in quiet. What came out of that was this concept of consuming clarity. I was just like, there's so much consumption happening in society. Like everyone's consuming information. We're consuming so much abundance of food, a digital age of chronic consumption of like Wi-Fi or things we're not asking for that are disrupting our biology, disrupting our minds. There's all these things. And I was like, I just want to be a place of clarity for people. I want to be somewhere that people can go where they know that they're consuming clarity and peace of mind and honest things and truthful things and good information. And so that's where consuming clarity came from, like a 4-hour meditation where I was inundated and overwhelmed by the chronic state of overstimulation of the world and wanted to be part of changing that.
That's really cool. Did it feel like it was like a download that came to you?
Yeah, I was really praying and meditating and trying to hear my own heart and my own voice and God's voice and get to the bottom of what my purpose is. So then I quit my job and I wanted to create something that aligned with my feeling of like consuming clarity. And I don't really know where the idea of candles came from. I think it was just like something on the market where like, there wasn't a lot of clarity on. Like I knew that it was a product that had a lot of junk in it and that people were consuming but didn't realize they were consuming because it's just like in people's environments and they're filled with toxins and they just light them and they don't think about how much they're consuming of like chemicals and crap. And so I made them as kind of a hobby, but also I was just still in this place of like being inundated with, I don't really know what to do, but I know that there's this idea of consuming clarity and I'm going to use my hands and like create something with it. So that was the first thing of consuming clarity was the candles. So that was my launch. And honestly, I didn't really expect much of it. It was like I made, I think like around 50 candles and I just had them. And my husband was finally like, I think you need to like do something with these. Why don't you make a post on Instagram? See if anyone wants one. And so I was like, all right, fine. And I had just started a new job. It was still in social work, but I was doing case management again with a different population. I was like, okay, fine, I'll just post them. And then I posted them and I got like so much feedback that I wasn't expecting. So this entire winter, I posted them in November. This entire winter, I was like waking up at 4 a.m. before my full-time job to fill all these orders. I had no idea I was going to have. It was all completely through Instagram. I didn't even have like a website or an ordering page or anything. It was just like, hey, I want this candle. And I was just like, okay. Like I had no idea what I was doing, but it was a really fun venture. It taught me what's possible and that people would actually want what I have to offer in the world and gave me a little confidence and also gave me a belief that I can create something good for people. And it was really fun and really inspiring. And then I went and got my yoga teacher certification, which if you've ever gotten a certification like that, it's a journey that changes you like fundamentally. And so that brought me closer into my purpose. I've just been like chipping away at figuring out what my purpose is and getting closer to it. And then through my own health issues, my PCOS and my Lyme, those were all really big parts of my journey. So I just have all of these things that like weren't really making sense in the moment that I look back on and I'm just like, oh, that was all like happening for me. And it was meant to push me towards where I am now, which really is being a place of service for people. When I was in college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was like, why am I here and why am I in college? And I just remember going to my advisor because I kept getting called in because I didn't pick a major yet. And I was like almost a junior. And they were like, what are you doing here? What? You can't be here if you have no purpose in being here. What do you want to do? And I was like, I just want to help people. Like, I don't know. I just want to help people. And then my advisor was like, okay, do you want to do like social work? And I was like, I don't really even know what that is. And then went into it because I was 19 and I had no idea what to do. But yeah, that's my role in life. If that's my purpose and what I've always wanted to do and what I still want to do, I feel grateful every day to be making even the tiniest impact in people's lives if they listen to these podcasts or follow us on Instagram or join our coaching program. It's a blessing.
Wow. So it's interesting that you wandered into the field of social work. It wasn't really like a strong choice of yours, but obviously you really cared about your cases and the people that you were helping. Was it hard for you to walk away from that career, or was it just too stressful?
Well, I loved social work. When I went to school for it, I was like, okay, I love this. It was like psychology based. I got to learn a lot about people. I got to learn how to work with people. It's a very political career. And while I was still in the first job, I'm working with my foster teens, I started a master's program. What happened was while I was in my master's program, I just noticed there was a ton of indoctrination happening. And I was noticing that the papers I was being asked to write were to just defend ideas, whether I believed them or not. And I realized that in order to get an A on this, I just have to give them the defense of this idea and this doctrine that they want. But what if I don't agree with it? And I was realizing that there wasn't room for critical thought or asking questions. And there was one girl in my class who pushed back and said, like, well, what if it's actually not a bad thing? Or what if it's this way? And she got shut down like immediately and was like, nope, that's not how we see it. That's not the way that we think about it. And basically, we're not going to entertain that thought. And I messaged her privately and I was like, thanks for saying that. I feel that way. And I feel like there's not a lot of room for critical thought here. We're basically being taught how to think. And if that's what this is, I don't really want to pay a butt ton of money to be taught what to think. I would like an education that teaches me that I can think for myself and ask questions and create my own like papers on my own thoughts and not fail because of it. So I realized there was a ton of indoctrination in it, in the education. So I dropped out.
Yeah, I would imagine that kind of hinders any growth or positive change, especially in that industry. You mentioned like you were the squeaky wheel in your office. Would you say that people like you that maybe wanted to push and advocate for change or had like a really like strong flame that they were carrying in that regard, do you feel like they don't last long in that career
Yes.
path?
Yeah. You definitely don't last long. But it is ironic too, because in my education throughout my bachelor's, all you learn is like social advocacy, like advocate for your clients, you know, like care about them, put them first. And then like when you actually do it, when you get into the career, it's like, that's not how it works here. And you're like, okay. But yeah, it's exhausting and it's really hard to watch, especially when you're dealing with children. And I would say that's why the burnout rate in social work is so high. And it's probably similar to like the way that like doctors feel in a system where like they get burnt out because they've amassed all this debt and then they go into the field to like help people with their health. And then they realize at some point, I'm sure, unless you're putting total blinders on, that you're actually not doing anyone any favors and the system is rigged. And so you either keep going and comply or choose not to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's making me kind of think of like I don't know, we talked about toxic empathy a few podcasts ago. And I think that for me, at least, part of that was like internalized for me. And then part of that was like kind of the liberal ideologies that I subscribed to that kind of taught you that you should feel empathy and be compassionate to all of these different causes and groups, which I don't think that that's a bad thing. But when it's costing you your own sanity or your own health or safety, then it becomes a problem. Why can't there be this conversation about a middle ground or about different ways to affect change instead of this path, this trajectory that we're already on?
I was coming from a background too, simultaneously where I was studying social work and I was deep into Christian communities where toxic empathy is also very present. Everyone's burdens are your burdens. And that is beautiful in a way. Like you're saying, it's not a bad thing, but you can easily burn yourself out. And there's no one saying or teaching people how to navigate having boundaries in those situations, especially when you're like a naturally empathetic or service-oriented person. You can just dive too far into empathy and give too much of yourself.
Yeah, and the individual is ostracized if they're not subscribing to everything. I know I felt that a little bit, even in my dance career. There was a lot of, especially when you're in like smaller regional companies that maybe are not part of the greater like AGMA union, there are really like no rules. It's like the wild, wild west, and whoever's in charge, what they say goes. And being in several of those situations, if you have a very strong mindset about certain things, it's hard to sit back and just be like, okay, we're going to go along with this thing that is really detrimental to my health or just doesn't make sense. For example, when I was dancing in San Diego, our schedule was Tuesday to Sunday. So our only day off was Monday. And we were contracted from like 10 to 3 or 4 on our work days. You're supposed to like have that time set aside. And a lot of times, not everybody would be rehearsing for the same things, but time was never managed well. They were never thinking about the time that they were taking from you, even though they weren't paying us very much money. Everybody had to have a second job unless like mom and dad were totally subsidizing your life. We'd have to go in all 6 days of the week, which a 6-day work week as a dancer is pretty strenuous. It's good to have more than one day off. And it was almost working us to a certain extent. Like the director's running rehearsals and you can see that the core is not being in line. Like they're not following the person in front of them and nobody is fixing spacing or anything. And it's like, we're going to be the ones on stage presenting us. This is a representation of us. Like, I want to look good. I want people to think that we look good, but clearly you don't care enough to like put the effort in. And that's just kind of it. Things like that started to like build up for me. Like there was lots of little things where it was like, I could figure out a much better way to do this, but I'm not allowed to have a voice in this situation. So that's kind of like where I got to my breaking point where I was like, okay, I think maybe this just isn't where I need to be anymore.
I think it might be our Leo placements because we both have strong Leo energy and leadership energy. And I think that maybe you and I just like aren't designed to work for other people. We're system minded. You and I are so detailed too that I think we can see things and we're like, I could do that better.
Yes. I got to be like the squeaky wheel or kind of the toxic person in the room because it got to the point where I was so fed up and I was complaining a lot and it started to get back to management. So I don't think I was wrong about any of the things that I was complaining about, but it was actually funny because I had a meeting my last season. I had a meeting with the director at the end of the season to talk about like contracts and everything. And I was pretty set that I wasn't going to come back. And he kind of asked about me stirring things up and complaining and things. And I was like, I've been unhappy about X, Y, and Z. And like, it doesn't make sense to me. And I laid out a ton of stuff that I was just not happy with. And he was like, well, all right, if you want your contract, it's here for you. And I was like, why would you even want me in the room? It doesn't make any sense. And that just plays to the point of like, they're not running things efficiently. And like the people in charge, it's like an ego game for them. It's not like they're trying to do best by everybody else.
And I was a squeaky wheel in my church too, when I was going through that situation where I was like seeing issues or asking questions and there was no room for asking questions in the church that I was attending or else like you're problematic. So, we've been those people in those settings, but I think it serves us really well in what we're doing now. And those situations actually set us up really nicely for where we are now. But I want to hear about what Spring to Life started.
Yeah. So after I was like, no, I'm not taking your contract. I'm done with this. My dad had just died. It was 2016. And I knew I was going to quit, but I hadn't really thought any further ahead than that. My season ended and I was like, okay, like, what am I doing? I guess I need to get a job. Got a job at this new spin studio that was opening up close to my house. And that was kind of like my entree into the fitness world because I did a lot of yoga while I was dancing, but I had never been really into one kind of cross training. I had tried running and messed up my ankles. I never understood what to do in the gym. And through doing hot yoga, I ended up injuring my back just because Bikram is really intense and I'll probably never go back to doing hot Bikram yoga again. So I was working in this spin studio and seeing how group fitness worked and My skin was really bad and I was dealing with a lot of inflammation and trying to figure out all of these things. So during that time, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition came onto my radar. So I started thinking about like, ooh, do I want to explore that? And that was in the back of my mind. And then I was thinking about Pilates and do I want to explore getting certified, because I was also dealing with like a lot of chronic pain and lingering injuries. I had been in a car accident. I got rear-ended and had whiplash and overuse from dancing and not holding things from the right place. I was just really jacked up in my neck and my back to the point where I couldn't have like both my hands on the steering wheel. It was hard for me to carry stuff. I was so weak and had so much pain. And then migraines were an issue. So I was starting to get to the point after seeing my dad pass at 56 from cancer and then taking a step back from dance and realizing how not healthy I was, even though I'd always thought, oh, I'm healthy because I'm a dancer. Like that doesn't make any sense looking back on it. So I was like, okay, I got to start to do something. So before I enrolled at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, I decided to pursue the Pilates certification because I was like, I need to do something to feel better because I'm getting migraines every other week and it's putting me out for a couple days. And so I ventured into that, started teaching pretty soon, and then I got certified. I started teaching and I really felt lost because I had been teaching ballet for a year. I started when I was in high school, like a freshman or sophomore. I started teaching ballet. So I had lots of years of experience of teaching a group, but Pilates was new because it was this different vocabulary and I didn't quite understand what we were doing because I had come to it from this place of like, I have this pain and I'm trying to heal my body, but the dots weren't connecting and the questions I was asking, I wasn't getting the answers that I was looking for. So I kind of felt like, I was like, I don't really get this. Like, it's not really hitting it for me. I was teaching at Club Pilates, so I'll say that. And that's where I got certified the first time. So while I started teaching there, I started taking class at other studios and I stumbled upon this studio in San Diego that was owned by a second generation Pilates instructor, which means that she was taught by the direct lineage of people that trained with Joseph Pilates. And within 2 classes at this studio, I could feel a difference in my pain and my strength. And I was like, okay, this is what I've been looking for. Because it's a totally different approach to Pilates, classical versus contemporary. And the woman that ran the studio knew that I was a new teacher and could see that I was interested, and she had a mentorship program. So she offered that to me, and I thought about it for a minute. I was like, well, I just finished doing a certification. That was kind of expensive, but I also was like, this is what I was looking for in the first place. So I decided to do that, and that was 6 months with her. So I was starting to really understand how to connect with my body, without having the mirror in front of me, and understanding the root of Pilates and like how things are supposed to feel, which translated into me being able to help other people, which is really what I wanted to be able to do. Once I was able to help myself, I also wanted to be able to help people manage pain or get stronger. So I was doing that. And then I'm just known for adding too many things onto my plate. So at that point, then I was like, okay, I'm ready to start with the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. So I went in for their holistic health coaching. And then while I was doing that, I decided to sign up for their hormone health extension certification. So I was doing all of these things and at the same time experimenting on myself because I was having digestive issues and food sensitivities and the acne and the bloating and mood swings and brain fog. So once I started the hormone health section of things really started to click into place for me because I had had a hormonal IUD for 5 years at that point, and I didn't really know anything about my cycle as a dancer. It was like when my period didn't come, I was like, oh, great. Like, I don't have to deal with that. And also, like, it means that I probably maybe lost some weight because I'm not ovulating and not getting my period. And I didn't even know about the ovulation piece. So when I started to learn about like the phases of the cycle, everything started to fall into place. And it was also anger at like, how could I be an adult, like a 26, 27-year-old adult and not know these things about my body? Like, why aren't we learning this stuff? And so I started to see these parallels between Joseph Pilates' approach to his method is really called contrology, and now we just call it Pilates after him. So his approach to contrology, which really it goes beyond exercise, like he was getting his clients to dry brush, he was walking around barefoot, he was all about getting sunlight, he was like,
Is this like the father of Pilates?
he invented it. It's totally, I mean, he definitely borrowed things. Like the more like I've gotten back into yoga, doing like hatha yoga and stuff, and the more I experience other things, I can kind of see like, oh, this is where he got the idea for rowing from, or this is where this came from. But everything is coming from the inside out. You're moving from your core out. You're never just using your arm to do something. You're initiating from your center. So there's this whole idea of control and moving from like a really strong core. And then he also had the awareness that we needed to be doing these kind of holistic lifestyle things like stimulating our lymph. And, you know, his book is called Return to Life. So that's where.
Is Pilates a new thing? It's not that old?
Nope. He started creating the method during World War II because he was in a prison camp. There's lots of different like theories about where exactly he started. He was a boxer and a gymnast, and he trained policemen and military, like back in Europe. He's from Germany. And then he made his way over to the US. And there's kind of like some question about like how he got here and why he came here and all of that. But he really was a genius in the way that he could intuitively like figure these things out, because there wasn't like the science backing this stuff up back then. It was him like going to the zoo and watching how the big cats like roll around, or watching like how the seals move, or watching how like babies naturally move. That's kind of the basis of all of real Pilates. A lot of the Pilates that you see like on Instagram and stuff right now is not really like, it's low impact movement on a reformer. And the reformer is just such a small piece of the Pilates method. There's so much more to it. So I started to see how I could use that method and like kind of look through it through the lens of women's hormones and kind of combine these things to help women understand their cycles, have a better relationship with their body and with exercise. And because it changed I had like, I don't know, I just remember like one day being in my house and just like all my wheels were spinning. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to hate my body anymore. I don't have to hate my period anymore. I'm not supposed to feel the same way every single day. And like, I can enjoy exercise and not punish myself with it. It was just like all of these like light bulbs going off. And I was like, I know that there are so many women out there that have these same ingrained thoughts because they don't know any better. They don't know about their bodies. I thought my IUD was a good thing preventing pregnancy, but it was also like throwing my hormones out of whack and making me like so miserable, you know, and I didn't even know like that was the root. And that's not the only cause of why I was so unhappy, but it was a big contributing factor to it. So I started to kind of unravel all of this, got rid of my IUD, started to, you know, just go down that rabbit hole. And so I had the idea for the Spring to Life method, which was kind of inspired by Joseph Pilates' Return to Life. And it was really honestly too big of an idea. I had like all of these elements. I was like, well, it comes down to your movement, but it's also your lifestyle and it's your nutrition. And, you know, it's like what you're exposing yourself to in your home environment and like, you know, everywhere. So yeah, I had this idea for this huge lifestyle brand that was way too big of a piece for me to chew by myself. But I persevered for about 4 years trying to make it work by myself until I realized I needed help. And that kind of brings us to where we are right now.
My vision for consuming clarity was so similar. And I went and got my certification as a functional hormone specialist, got my certification as a yoga instructor. You had the Pilates and the hormones, and I had the yoga and the hormones. And our social media we were both trying to send a similar message of lifestyle changes and really help people and help women understand how to live cyclically, because we had overhauled our own lives and realized how much better life could get. I had such a big vision for what consuming clarity could be, but we're definitely better together. Coming together was like the ultimate hack. neither of us knew we needed.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I told you at the beginning of 2024, I started having conversations with a friend of mine who's like kind of in the spiritual space, in the coaching space. And she had entered into a collaboration that had ended up being, it was short. It was a long-term collaboration, but like short in terms of like ours is not going to end as soon as theirs did. Like we're still going. But it was like a very transformative experience. And I know she learned a lot from it. And I was so curious about that, about like two, somewhat similar but different practitioners coming together to create something together. Because I had done, like shorter collaborations. Like I've worked with coaches and like they're always like collaborate. And it kind of always is like ends up being this short term thing. Like, oh, we're working on this workshop together or we're going to do this event together. And it's like a lot of work for not a lot of reward. So that had been my experience with it in the past. But I was also like, I just can't continue to do all of this by myself. Like, there's no way I can keep up with every single one of these pieces while also having the other job that I have, because I still have like a normal jobby job, as I call it. And so it was like, okay, I need help. And so I was like simmering on like who or how I can find somebody. And you just kept popping into my head.
It was meant to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had approached me around the time that I was getting married and I was in full wedding planning mode. And I have learned through my own like energy flow and being a manifesting generator that I can't say yes to everything, because in my previous life, I said yes to everything. And I'm such a like enthusiastic person. When I get asked to do something, I genuinely feel excited about it. So I'm just like, yes. And then I like look around at my life and I'm just like, oh my goodness, there is way too much. And I've gone through that pattern too many times in my life. So when you approached me about it, I was like, maybe let me think about it, because I'm in wedding planning mode. And as much as I like want to jump in and say yes, I have to know myself and take my step back and like think about things. And I have to give myself time to make decisions, which you know pretty well now, because we make decisions like that a lot. Then I think I came back to you around a couple months later, like end of summer, once I had gotten married and gone on my honeymoon and all that. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And we originally planned the podcast, but then we got talking about putting together digital offers and like having more resources for women and more ways that we can help people. And then kind of on accident, we were like, I think we could create a really good coaching offer with this and really help a lot of people.
Yeah, it just like naturally flowed into, one thing led to the next. And now here we are. And I've never felt so like on top of the things that I want to be doing for the business. And I know I've told you, like, it's kind of given me this sense of freedom in a way that like I don't feel so much pressure on the Spring to Life method anymore. And I feel like that can be what it was always meant to be, which is cyclical Pilates with maybe some of like this cycle thinking and fertility awareness things mingled in, but mostly focusing on the Pilates aspect. And then we can take all of these like nutrition and lifestyle and mindset and, environmental things and put it into Inhabit and like co-create something that's really powerful and impactful for people.
Yeah. And I think what's so cool about our collaboration and all that we've already learned from it is that it's the testimony to our coaching program and like the pillars that we created for it, because we saw how hard it was to like do the things we wanted to do. We set our mind on goals and we like trudged through trying to accomplish them. But as soon as we came together, now we had the accountability and like that statistic we always talk about where like when you meet with someone regularly for check-ins, you have that ongoing accountability. And that's what we are for each other. And also what we provide to our students in our coaching program.
Yeah. Collaborating really was like hitting the gas pedal, because I had these projects that were like 50 to 75% done. And I just was like so overwhelmed with the amount of work that it would take to bring them across the finish line by myself that like I had just been like sitting on them for a long time. So like being able to like collaborate on them and like also get your like just amazing, wonderful insight. And I think like your background in social work probably is a huge part of this, but like you have such a good sense of like that mindset piece and kind of like digging a little bit deeper with people that like the coaching program needs. And it's like, I know we talk about how we learn from each other all the time, but I think it's just so much more powerful this way.
And it's so fun too. I was talking to Evan. We went out last weekend to dinner and I was just like, it's really funny because Caitlin and I worked so well together, but we never identified our roles. We just fell into them. Like we didn't decide who was going to do what. We just did it and it worked.
Yeah. Like the things that you're good at are the things that I'm kind of like, and that kind of, I've kind of realized that like, okay, some of the things that I've taken on now, like I might have kind of like dreaded in the past, but it was because I had so much stuff on my plate. So I have a little bit more like wiggle room to be like, okay, I can be a little more creative with this and I can spend a little bit more time on this. And I don't have to worry about like, you know, Caroline, because she's totally like capable of, you know, everything that we're doing. And it's just like, it's a confidence booster for sure.
I think it's cool that we both have such an understanding of our cycles and know the way that we care for ourselves too, because with a traditional job, I never felt like I could be like, hey, I'm in my luteal phase. I'm super tired. This is what's going on with me today. And like, they're going to be like, what? But like you and I can do that. Like we can be like, I'm tired today, or I woke up late. I'm sick. I'm rushed. Like, no rush. It's all good.
Words just aren't coming out today.
Yeah. And we just like, we get it.
I have this memory like seared in my mind from when I was still dancing. There was this Russian couple that was in San Diego dancing with a company, and the wife would like not come in sometimes. And we'd be like, where is she? You know, like, where is she? And then she'd come back like a day or two later and be like, I had my period. And we were like, what? She was like, yeah, in Russia, you take a day or two off to rest and then you come back, you know? And we, like, I know like ballet in Russia is like super intense. Like I know people that have gone to Russia to train, but they have that mindfulness of the female cycle that like, okay, just like go chill out and come back and you'll be better, because you can really like burn yourself out by trying to push through those lower energy times. Why not come back when you have all the energy to probably get everything done that you would have gotten done in those couple of days that you decided to rest?
That's something I always teach when I host workshops and I teach people about hormones. I teach them that in ancient texts, like when you look through the Bible, when you look at these ancient texts, it was standard practice for women to like go seclude themselves, or just women to gather together. And they didn't live the everyday lifestyle that they did the rest of the month when they were on their period. And I just always thought that was so cool and interesting, because our society is so like shove a tampon in and get to it. And we've never seen that in ancient cultures otherwise. So I think our society has a lot of backwards work to do in that way.
Well, we're so excited about this group coaching program, but we have so many ideas for cool ways that we can continue to serve our audience and continue to bring this knowledge to the people that need it.
100%.